Let's do this, Pooh. Does anyone remember that? Anyway, so I was doing a live stream the other day and someone commented the shocking and scintillating question of, do I think that Niall Horan could achieve the same amount of success as Harry Styles? Now, I'm not one to compare the members of One Direction and their success because they're just so different and on different paths. So that's not what this video is if you were looking for something extremely juicy. But my answer to that question is yes. I think Niall Horan is really interesting, not just because he's my long-term boyfriend. I think there's something about him and his career that's both wildly exciting and extremely underrated at the same time. So today we're going to talk about it. So before I dish all my silly little opinions about Niall, I want to kind of talk through his career so far. So Niall began in music when he was about 11 and he taught himself to play guitar with YouTube videos, which literally crying and fucking screaming. Little 11-year-old Niall teaching himself how to play guitar. There's just something so near and dear to my heart, okay? Anyways, as he got older, he continued really liking music and wanting to pursue music, and he ended up doing a bunch of performances around his town. He did a little performance for a fundraiser that his town was doing. He also got a spot performing in a supporting slot for a former X Factor contestant named Lloyd, which I feel like is wild. He was the supporting slot for someone who was on the X Factor. I feel like not a lot of people talk about Niall's musical journey. So here I am. But of course, later in 2010, Niall would go and audition for the X Factor himself at 16 years old. I am sobbing right now. I may not look like it, but I'm fucking sobbing. Okay. He tweeted this very famous, applied for the X Factor, hope it all works out. And look what happened to him. Niall literally invented manifesting. He literally invented manifesting in 2010. Initially, during his audition, Niall performed an a cappella version of You Got It Bad by Usher. And it wasn't necessarily bad. I did watch a video of this performance because it is in an extended cut on YouTube, but never made the TV footage. So I feel like a lot of people don't even know this audition exists.
When you say that you love her, and you really don't. Everything that used to matter, it don't matter no more. Like my money or my cars, you can have it all. And flowers, cars, and candy.
But he did audition a cappella originally, and it wasn't bad. Like I said, I watched it. It wasn't terrible. It just wasn't enough. It didn't feel like he was showcasing his voice enough. He wasn't really doing much. So the judges were like, okay, slay, but give us something else with the track. Do you have anything that has music with it? So Niall did have a backup track. He decided to sing So Sick by Neo. And here is my personal review. I'm no music critic by all means, or someone who knows about singing, but I do love sharing my unnecessary opinions. So to me, Niall's audition wasn't god awful. Obviously, he made it through. If it was god awful, he wouldn't have made it through.
I gotta change my answering machine. And now that I'm alone, and cause right now it says that I can't come to the phone. And I know it makes no sense, cause you walked out the door, but it's the only way I hear your voice anymore.
I just feel like listening to Niall's So Sick performance, he sounded very underdeveloped. He didn't really sound nervous. I feel like other members of One Direction struggled with sounding nervous in their auditions. I literally just said I wasn't going to compare them. Anyway, but Niall didn't really sound nervous. He just sounded so underdeveloped because he was a 16-year-old boy, right? With no proper vocal training or anything like that. I feel like he sounded exactly like you would expect a 16-year-old teenage boy to sound, singing So Sick by Neo in front of a big ass crowd of people, including Katy Perry. Okay, there was famous people there. But I do think what made Niall really stand out during his X Factor audition, regardless of not being anything spectacular vocally, was his confidence. When it was his turn to audition, he sauntered right onto that stage. He told the judges straight up that he wasn't nervous. He said exactly what his dreams were and didn't hold back. He described exactly what he wants to happen to him. He wants to play stadiums. He wants to be the next Justin Bieber. He was bantering with the judges, making jokes with them, hyping up the crowd, getting them to clap. I think it was just such a matter of he knew exactly what he wanted in his life and in his career, and he had so much potential. I feel like it takes a really good person in the music business to look at a teenage boy like that and see past their underdeveloped voice and see their potential instead. What could this boy become in the future when we give him some money and some training? What is he going to be like after the fact? I think it takes someone really talented to see that, and the judges did. Thank God for Katy Perry changing her initial stance on Niall and voting to send him through, okay? Where would we be as a society if Katy Perry gave Niall Horan a no? Like, it's dark and scary. So yeah, he got sent through to the boot camp round, and that is where he initially got eliminated and didn't make it any further in the boys category. But I'm sure you know, instead, he was put in world-famous, spectacular, amazing boy band One Direction, alongside 4 other losers who didn't make it either. Now, I feel like Niall, as a member of One Direction specifically, is one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm not going to talk through One Direction's career. I do have a whole 2-hour-long video doing that. If that's something you're interested in, I'll have it linked below. But yes, madly successful, biggest boy band in the world, definitely kicked off Niall's entire career, yada yada yada. We know, we owe them the thanks. Thank you, One Direction, for Niall's career. But other than that, I feel like there's 3 things that I want to bring up when it comes to Niall as a member of One Direction specifically. One is that I feel like a lot of people don't realize that Niall was statistically one of the most favored members. No, not one of. He was. He was statistically the most favored member of One Direction for at least a while. I don't know if it was like that the entire time they were in a band. But I vividly remember an interview where someone brought up that research studies were conducted and Niall was statistically the most favored in the band around Take Me Home era. So I don't know how long that lasted. But at one point, they literally did the research and he was the most favored member. And nobody talks about it. I feel like if you were to ask someone who didn't know, who do you think was the most favored member of One Direction, they'd be like, Harry, easy. Oh, Harry Styles for days. But no, everybody and their mothers was a Niall girl, and I do mean in their mothers. I remember going to see This Is Us in theaters, and my aunt thought Niall was the best one. There was an outrage initially when Niall didn't get enough solos on their debut album. Everybody was angry, but then he did get more singing time, he did get more spotlight, and the girls went crazy, and he ended up being the most favored member. And for my second little tangent, not only was Niall like really favored among the fans, but Niall was favored among the band. If you are someone who like paid attention to One Direction closely in their interactions with each other, you would know that Niall was like this little brother character for them. And he was like everyone in the band's best friend. I need to play you guys some examples of this. I'm going to put in some clips that kind of stress what I'm talking about because it's so cute. Like, you just have to see it.
Niall needs a little bit more protection from the rest of us than anybody else.
Oh, say gang brave.
Protection.
Come on for that.
But,
Niall,
what
did you say now?
I'm going to get me very good at this acting business.
Please, Niall, please.
Come on.
There's nothing you're not very good at, mate.
It's my
If you're having a good time, then I haven't really got much else to say, so here's the what we done.
It's going to be a great year. Why'd you whisper in my ear? So yeah, and that doesn't finish till November, and he's telling me to say I'm Irish. Well, we've got the movie coming out and the world tour, and I love Ireland, and it's going to be
protection over him, like he's almost like my little brother.
You don't have a Valentine this year. Who would you like to be your Valentine? If you could have anyone in the world. I don't know, man. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to have to force an answer on you. Tell me.
Come on.
Miranda.
Me and Louis always say like Niall's like our little brother, like, and to see him on stage like smashing it out with his guitar and stuff, it's quite cool. Like, you have like a sense of like you're almost proud of him. Yeah.
It's like within the One Direction fandom, there's this culture of like picking out the cutest One Direction pairings, like friendships, and mashing their names together, obviously. And Niall is half of all of the best One Direction friendships. Like, it's always Niall. Neri, hello. Neri is like one of the best One Direction friendships there is. Nui, Zyle is so... Niam, like all of them are just half of Niall, and he's best friends with all of them. He's so great, so favored in that band, so favored by the public. I just perceive Niall Horan as an easy person to love. Like, you are so easy to love, it takes no effort. Like, you just meet him and you love him. Which is also, third point, why he wasn't forced into a super harsh and specific marketing narrative / brand like the rest of his One Direction counterparts. I've definitely talked about this a million times before in previous videos that I've done on One Direction, but Niall was such a goldmine for One Direction's team, or like music business people in general. He's just like such a simple, straight white man who who likes to play the guitar and go golfing and write music. He's goofy and clumsy. He was blonde when they were in the band, the only blonde member. Like, it was just so easy for him to be exactly who he is, and that's his boy band persona. Like, he fits into his own category himself. He doesn't need to be anything else. Where all the other boys were sort of forced to play a part, like Liam as the dad, and Harry as the womanizer, Zayn as the mysterious bad boy, and Niall didn't need a character like that because he was just so good on his own. And I feel like all these things about Niall transferred so nicely into his solo career and made it really easy for him to keep a fan base. He is just so perfect. He just seems so perfect. Like, tell me one thing wrong with Niall Horan. You can't. You can't. And if you can, you're boring and I hate you. It just feels like Niall was handcrafted by the gods to do exactly what he's doing. Like, he was made for this, and One Direction's team is so lucky they got their grubby little hands on him because he's so easy to market, okay? But I do think one thing about Niall that was a little underappreciated during his time in the band is his songwriting. I feel like his songwriting didn't really shine full force until his solo career came around, but he was writing good tier songs for One Direction. We've all heard Temporary Fix. We've all heard Fool's Gold. But Niall's first ever solo song was released in September of 2016. You see that segue? Talking about his career, and we segue into the solo career. Ugh, I'm so good. But yeah, This Town is described as a strummy folk song about wistful, young, lost love. And when he released his first ever solo song, it was immediately noted that he was definitely not sticking to that boy bandy pop kind of sound, which I feel like is really expected for Niall. I don't think that's super surprising, or if anyone is really expecting him to stay in that lane. His debut album, Flicker, also kind of followed suit with this sound and had a very like soft rock, folk, even touches of country sound. Critics called it a big step into musical maturity, saying it's tasteful, emotional, and charming. I really like the Flicker era as a whole, like not just the album, but the look of everything in the music videos and his little tour that he did. It was just really, really well suited for the sound of the album and Niall as a whole. Like, he had his whole little folky, acoustic guitar-y kind of aesthetic going on, and it worked so well. He did a really good job at establishing that he can have a thing on his own outside of One Direction, and he made it really nice and clean and digestible. It was just so good. And yes, he did do a tour. Like I said, it was a world tour with 84 shows that sold really, really well, and they also included little meet and greet packages, so that was super cute. I miss those meet and greet pictures so much. I mean, I never met him, but I miss seeing them, okay? October of 2019, though, Niall began his second era as a solo artist by releasing the lead single, Nice to Meet Ya. Oh my god, this time in my life. I was on a train to Chicago when I heard that for the first time. Ugh. But anyway, this took on a very different sound than his debut album. It was leaning way more into the pop rock kind of sound rather than the folky, guitar-y, country sound. The music video for Nice to Meet Ya was super cool and creative, though, and I think it showed a little bit of a different side of Niall that he's leading into much more in the present, because it had all these little hidden clues in it. Like, if you watch the music video, there's a bunch of song titles from his debut album in it that we didn't know at the time because we didn't know the track list, but he stuck them all in the music video, and that's so cool. And even cooler, there's a scene where there's a phone number on the napkin, like in the bar, sitting on the bar, and if you called the number on the napkin, you could hear Niall like talking about his album, or you could hear like little snippets. I think it was Small Talk. There was a snippet of one of his songs, Small Talk, that you could hear on the phone. So fucking cool. The album Heartbreak Weather as a whole came out in March of 2020, which I'm sure you know is the worst time in the history of anything to release something. COVID like definitely got in the way of so many things that Niall was working on and wanted to do. And I'm always so curious about how the Heartbreak Weather era would have turned out if the pandemic was never a thing. But the album Heartbreak Weather was very drastically different than Flicker. Not drastically different. The songwriting was still similar because it's fucking Niall. But like I said, he took on a much more pop rocky sound rather than the folky strummy sound. It was a lot more upbeat. It was a different side of Niall altogether, which I think is cool that he can do both. But what I love about these two albums is that they're sonically and aesthetically so different, but at the same time, they're both still so Niall Horan. Like, they go together as a cohesive body of work while being very different albums, and I love it when an artist does that. It's just the lyricism and the details of his production that make it so Niall, and it was just a great body of work. And he also did take the whole interactive fun promo thing a step further, like I was talking about earlier with the Nice to Meet You music video. He did a lot of that interactive stuff in this era. He ended up having this weatherman persona called Neil Storm, which makes sense because that album is called Heartbreak Weather. So he was like a weatherman, and he was doing all these little short YouTube clips doing these forecasts where it would like relate to songs and different lyrics and stuff on Heartbreak Weather and give you clues about what was going to happen, which is so fun and so creative and keeps fans really engaged. I feel like Niall has a team behind him that really genuinely cares about his career and his work and like promoting him and keeping him fresh in people's minds. And I just can't say the same for other people's teams. There are certain artists out there who clearly have lazy ass teams that don't care about them. But Niall's team seems to really fucking love him, okay? He signed to Capitol Records under Universal Music, if you were curious, and they just seem to take such good care of him. For his new era, which we now know is called The Show, they did this little interactive website with the melting candle that was counting down to his single Heaven. His merch has always been really cute. Like if you go and look at his merch from like the Heartbreak Weather era and even this era, it's designed so cute and matches his website so cohesively. Niall is also very active on social media and he interacts with his indirects a lot, which is basically where you go on Twitter and you would say something about Niall. So you'd be like, new tweet, I wonder how Niall Horan smells. And then Niall would go and literally search Niall Horan. And he would reply to people using his name in tweets, indirects. And he does that a lot, and he tweets a lot and interacts with his replies a lot. He's also always done Instagram lives and TikTok lives very frequently, playing music on lives, singing, answering questions, doing lives with other people. He posts photo dumps monthly on Instagram, wrapping up what he's been doing so people can see like what his life looked like behind the scenes. He's very active on TikTok, doing trends and like little promotional videos and singing and all kinds of covers and things like that, which is really good for any artist. I mean, having a following on TikTok and genuinely being active is good for anybody who's in the entertainment industry. Like, these are all the super appealing things about Niall that make him so easy to love as an artist, and it makes it so easy to be a fan of him. Like, he is just doing everything so perfectly. You mix all of that with the fact that he's so easy to market, and you literally just have your dream musician right there. It is so crazy to me how born for this he was. Like, I'm in so much pain over it. Like, he is checking every fucking box. If I was on Niall's team, I would literally be having a field day every single day because he is doing everything right. So active on social media, on every social media, interacting with fans. He cares about his fans. He's doing amazing promo, amazing marketing techniques. But that brings me to my stance that regardless of how perfect he is as a musician, I still think he's kind of underrated. And his potential is underrated. Maybe not in the realm of like One Direction and ex-One Direction fans, not really underrated because obviously, but I just mean like in the general public, in the mainstream, people don't realize how big Niall is and how easily he could climb the ladder too. His first album Flicker was #1 in Ireland and the Netherlands. It hit the top 3 in the UK and peaked at #1 on the US Billboard 200, just his first solo album. Then Heartbreak Weather also hit #1 in Ireland but rose to #1 in the UK too after Flicker failed to do so, so it's like one step up. Heartbreak Weather also debuted at #1 in the top album sales chart in the United States. And now he's released the first single from his third album, Heaven, and it's already #2 for trending tracks, and it's only been out for a week. And it hit nearly 25 million Spotify streams within a week of being released, and he gained 1.1 million Spotify listeners in one day. I just feel like Niall has all these things about him that make him have so much potential to be one of those humongous artists that's literally collecting Grammys every year. He's in a position to be that bitch. I can just see it. Like, he belongs there. Give that man a Grammy. I tried for this video to like sit down and come up with some concrete reasons why I don't think that Niall is quite there yet. Because I mean, he's wildly successful, but not quite there yet, like up with the big dogs. And I think partly the bad timing of Heartbreak Weather and the pandemic and things, I really do think a lot of things stats-wise would be very different for him if the pandemic wasn't going on and he had the chance to do better promo and like appearances and a tour and the one night onlys and all that stuff. But that's literally it. That's literally the one thing I can think of that was like hurting his career a little bit. He has an amazing target audience. He makes really good music. It's relatable music. It's easily digestible music, a different range of music for different types of music lovers. His promo is amazing. He's super engaging, super active on social media. So I think it really just comes down to like timing, if I had to put like a name to it. Like, he is only in his third era. Like, he's only in his third era. His third era just started and he's doing really good for himself, which makes me feel like in this current age of music, we've been seeing so many people blow up with their debut album or like an EP that we forget that Usually it takes an artist a minute to gain momentum and really get off the ground with their success. Not everyone could be an Olivia Rodrigo or an Ice Spice, okay? But I stand by the fact that Niall deserves a lot of mainstream attention, and I just can't wait for him to get there. Because I feel like Niall's vibe is very comparable to like an Ed Sheeran or a Shawn Mendes, and that's like how far out I want him to be pushed. He is about to be a coach on The Voice this season. I can't make a video about Niall without talking about this. He's literally about to be a coach on The Voice in the US, like the original The Voice. Just so wild to me. They had Miley Cyrus as a coach, they had Ariana Grande as a coach, and they invited Niall. So true. I feel like that says so much about where he's at in his career, because those are some really established artists, like a Miley and Ariana. And I just feel like having him as a coach on The Voice is really good. Like, it's gonna push him out to more people that are not in the confines of One Direction and ex-One Direction stans, and show other people that he really is a serious musician and not just some ex-boy bander, which I think could be another reason why he's being held back a little bit, because people don't take an ex-boy bander seriously as a solo artist. So good for him for agreeing to go on The Voice. Get that check, get that exposure. Rooting for you. But yeah, those are my thoughts on my little Niall. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about Niall's career so far, your favorite parts of his career, your favorite songs of his, and maybe some reasons maybe why you don't think he's super mainstream yet. Personally, I do think it is a timing thing and we just need to give him a second. But let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear. Don't forget to check down in the description for a little form I have where you guys can request video topics if you have something in music you want me to comment on. Also, while you're down there, you can check out my social medias. Follow me on everything. I'm trying to be like Niall, super active on social media. Yeah, I hope you're all having an amazing day, drinking all the water, thriving. And I'll see you in my next video. I just realized that I have fine line on display when I could have had heartbreak weather for the Niall video. Anyway, hope you're great. Okay, see you next time.